Okay, so at this time, I would like to introduce Debbie Danforth, our Comprehensive Health Division Director, to go over the cultural awareness policy.
Welcome everybody, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to try to make sure that I'm quick. They told me I have a few words, so I'll be quick and short. First of all, I just want to say that I have good news to share, and that is that as of last night, we have a approved budget for FY19. So General Tribal Council took action last night, shortest meeting that we've had, shortest approval of the agenda that we've had in a long time. So we do have an approved budget for FY19. So with that good news, I just want to talk a little bit about the whole process that we have gone through as an organization in terms of cultural awareness, cultural competency, cultural sensitivity in the workplace. This is not just an issue that impacts us as a health division. This is actually an issue that is nationwide. And kudos to our cultural awareness team in the fact that the work that they have done is being recognized by not just tribes in the state of Wisconsin, but is being recognized at a national level through Indian Health Service. We have had inquiries from Indian Health Service, from tribes in Wisconsin, and from all across the country in terms of requests to share our curriculum for cultural awareness training with those individuals so that they can make it work for their tribes, make it work for their nations because of the significance of cultural sensitivity and cultural competency within the workplace. The uniqueness of our curriculum is that if you look at those e-trainings, each one has an ending that applies to healthcare, which is specific to us. So kudos to our cultural awareness team because they work really hard on development of that curriculum. They put a lot of work into the development of each of those e-learnings and as well as a lot of work that goes into this annual training as well. So I just want to congratulate them on the hard work that they are doing. You should also receive any of the changes to the cultural awareness policy. The policy itself has been revised and updated with updated signatures, so your supervisors will be getting those out to you. In terms of the compliance, I know that a lot of times we tend to get busy in our day-to-day duties, and we kind of put it off and put it off. So I just want to re-emphasize the urgency and the need to remain in compliance with the policy because that will be reflected in your annual evaluations as well. So work with your supervisor for time to be able to work on those and really emphasize the significance of those e-learnings. In addition to that, the cultural awareness team is currently recognized and has representation from the following areas: health promotion, disease prevention, medical record data entry, purchased and referred care, community health, pharmacy, the CARS, and HIS. So if anyone in this room has a burning desire to want to participate on the cultural awareness team, please see one of the team members in the back and they will be more than happy to get you added to that notification so that they can begin having you participate in the monthly meetings as well as in the preparation of the e-learnings and the awarenesses that go out. So with that, I'm going to cut it off and turn it over to our host and our speaker. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Debbie. All right, so our event is about intergenerational healing, and we brought in a great keynote speaker. Her name is Wendy Hill. I'm just going to read her bio. Wendy was raised in a traditional Longhouse family and participated in the ceremonies all her life. From a near-death experience and illness at the age of 20 years old, the spirit world gifted Wendy with healing abilities. She has worked in the prisons with young offenders, women and men, helping to bring spiritual teachings to them. Today, she works as a traditional healer in numerous indigenous communities in North America for over 20 years. She does a variety of workshops regarding colonization, wellness, and healing. Today, she speaks on various spiritual topics, including prophecies and awareness of the needs of our spirit. She's worked as a professor at McMaster University for 5 years, teaching about traditional medicine alongside her brother. Wendy's most important goal is to help others to learn to have a peaceful relationship with themselves and others. She has done peace-building workshops and training using our conflict-resolving circles. Wendy is a grandmother of 2 grandchildren and a mother to 3 daughters, an aunt to many nieces and nephews. This time, let's welcome Wendy Hill.
I want to thank the women who invited me here. I want to introduce myself of who I am, and although she told you all that stuff about me, and more than that, my mother is from the Cayuga Nation, and her mother and so forth, and my mother's father, my grandfather, was Chippewa, and his so forth was the men on that side. But his mother, my great-grandmother on my mother's side, was Mohawk. So my grandfather spoke Mohawk, and he knew Chippewa. On my father's side, my father was Mohawk, and so forth, of his mothers and so forth. But his father was Oneida, and his grandfather was Onondaga. So this is all of who I am, as far back as I can go. So I want to welcome you here. What I've learned in the time of doing this work as a healer, I just recently turned 52 years old, so I've been doing this kind of stuff for 32 years. And it's been a real blessing, because when I go into communities, what I can see is I can see the progress, and I can also see when something has impacted. So the trauma. So trauma has been happening ever since contact, because the colonizers, the ones who came from Europe, they themselves were traumatized. They themselves had all kinds of horrible things that their people lived through and were living through. And so a lot of the behavior that they brought to our people was behavior that they were already doing over there in Europe for hundreds of years. And the sexual abuse is one of the worst remnants of what's been left over from that whole thing. And what I learned, because when I come across things, I study it. I look into where did that come from? Where did that behavior come from? And I was fortunate enough that I was working with a group of psychologists at that time, and they gave me a book. And this book was on the history of child sexual abuse. And it was written by 37 psychologists who did research on it. And what is said in there is that over in Europe, the sexual abuse was so rampant that in 1501 was the first law that was written around child sexual abuse. And what it said in there is 9 out of 10 men had reported being sexually abused by priests. That was in 1501. And so, as indigenous people, that behavior means that 9 out of 10 men who were getting off those ships had been molested. So that behavior followed them. And where did that start? I learned this about Caesar when he was trying to conquer, and he was trying to build that Roman soldiers, his empire. What he found was that the men there over in Europe, he had a hard time getting them to kill. And so what he realized is that when children were raised by their mothers, and these mothers were nurturing and they were caring for them, that's what prevented those men from being able to kill when they became adults. So the Romans at that time started taking all the boys and putting them in the boarding school. And that's where that started, so that they could create angry, hurt men, so that they could kill. That's where the whole boarding school thing came from. And so all the atrocities and all the fears and all the nightmarish stuff that you hear about boarding schools and residential schools started way back there. So now you look at today in 2018, and we're still feeling it, and we're still seeing it. And the problem now in Native country is that because as Native people, one of our most known identities is that we are spiritual people. We had a vast knowledge about spirituality and what the spirit needs and how to relate and how to take care of it. After we die, we have a whole process of how we take care of that spirit. And so when all of this stuff came, one of the things that was the most damaging was that our ability to transmit or to pass it on got lost and cut off when the residential schools came. So with the loss of that comes the loss of knowing how to respect yourself, knowing how to value yourself, knowing how to take care of yourself, and also how to treat other people. Because when you have the understandings about the spirit world and the spirituality, you understand that the Creator is inside each person. As long as you have life, you have that spirit in you, which is a part of Him. So however you treat people is how you're saying, I'm going to treat and talk to that Creator. That's my understandings about how to think and treat people. And so all the teachings, and I call it brainwashing basically, was what it did was it damaged our ability to have good relationships, healthy relationships with each other, how to have a good relationship with ourselves. And so when you look at that, then you can start to see the outcome. And the outcome has been, the biggest is the breakdown of families. Because in those boarding schools, they didn't learn how to be good parents. They learned how to be abusive and how to terrorize their children. That's what they learned. They really didn't learn a whole lot of how to make a living because they were hurt and wounded. And so that passes down. And one of the biggest problems I see today is the impact of those residential schools and the lack of parenting means that your children are going to be taken. Your children are going to be taken as a Native parent because you are 10 times more likely to be looked at and put under a microscope and said, are you doing this right? And you know, one of the, in some of the communities I go to, they're used to living in a teepee. They still live part-time in a teepee. The Cree people way up north, they're still living that way. So in a teepee, you're going to have about maybe, I don't know, 12 people. They got pretty good teepees. And so in a social work field, that would not be right. That would not be okay. 12 people in one room. So guess what would happen to the children? Taken. That is the biggest trauma that is still happening today. The fear of your kids being stolen or taken if you don't have the right amount of space. But as Native people, we were safe people to be with. And that was one of the best environments you could have, was going to bed at night knowing your parents and your grandparents are in the same room as you, and you hear them talking, and they would tell stories. And that's how history and the teachings of understanding about creation and so forth came from was at night when you would go to sleep, they would start telling the stories, and that's what would put you to sleep. And so today, you look at all these policies that have been made and that makes Native parents be more on the alert and under that microscope. That stress that's put there in the women when they're pregnant, has, especially if you're Native, has such high stress. And what does stress do to a body? Breaks it down and makes it weak. And what happens is cortisol. Cortisol is what gets released when you're under stress. Cortisol makes your body shoot a bunch of sugar through your body, glucose, so that you have the ability to run or to fight. But when you're pregnant and you have that amount of stress and you have that glucose going on, you can't reach for what a lot of people reach for, which is alcohol or drugs or something to try to calm yourself. As a pregnant woman, that's not a good idea. And so, she will reach for food. And usually it's unhealthy food, to try to soothe herself. Well, guess what? This baby that's being formed is getting the same kind of behavior taught. And that is, when there's stress, soothe yourself. Find the self-soother. So that woman who's under stress is creating a baby, a person who will have an addictive personality. That's why Native people have so much addiction problems. It's because of the amount of stress that's been put on them and the lack of support and resources and trying to understand what has happened to our people, what has happened to our parenting, what has happened to our families. That it's something that is so big, unless you're going to take these women who are pregnant, give them a place to stay where it's peaceful and calm, and help them to understand that the best, most ultimate space you can be in is in a state of peace, to be calm. And so, when you look at these traumas that our people have gone through, we're still living it. And that's why you see that addiction, because we haven't been able to stop the stresses. And so when I go and I work with people in our communities, one of the first things I tell them, as a Native person, as a healer, I'm going to talk about your spirit. I'm going to talk about what's lacking. And I'm going to talk about what you need to do to fix that. And I don't care about anything else. You can tell me about your family if you want, but we can fix them. It's you who's sitting in front of me. It's you I want to work with. So it's you that I'm going to work with. Your family, they'll have to come later, if they want to come at all, or maybe your behavior might be, if you change it, can affect them. But when I start to work with them, I talk to them about our spiritual needs and how if you grew up in this kind of environment where there was not a whole lot of healthy behavior, there was not real true bonding, because that bonding and that feeling of being loved no matter what, and being cared for, and knowing that you're going to be saved, nobody's going to come take you away, those things that weren't present when they were growing up is something that they can give to their children if they want. And so when I start to work with their spirit, I call in spirits to help them, to relieve them. Because when we go through all kinds of fear and hurt and confusion and chaos and all this, what happens is our mind goes into a place of paranoia, no trust. So to bring it back, I gotta start with the spirit. And in order for them to have trust, I gotta get to know them. And so I tell them who I am, where I come from, how I grew up. And my story is similar to a lot of Native people. In my home, we had 2 bedrooms, 8 kids. So my parents had their own bedroom, and the 8 of us slept in 1 bedroom, 2 sets of bunk beds, 2 kids per bunk bed. And it was the best childhood I could have ever asked for. I'm still so close to my siblings. There was no sexual, whatever interference. There was no unhealthy touches. It was great. I never experienced domestic violence. I never experienced alcoholism, drugs, abuse. I never experienced any of that. And so when I go and I talk to a lot of these communities, they can tell me similar stories. The abuse comes usually from a relative, an uncle, a cousin, whoever. And the difference between myself and a social worker or a psychologist or a psychiatrist is they can tell me these things. And I don't have to go and report that. I don't have to tell the police. I don't have to tell anyone. And I tell them that in the beginning. What happens between you and I stays here. Unless I feel there's a threat to yourself or someone else. If that person is suicidal, or if I'm afraid they're going to hurt this other person who might have abused them. If that, and then I tell them that. If you tell me this stuff, I have to make sure that they're safe. And so what happens is they're able to open up. They're able to tell me stuff that they wouldn't otherwise tell people. And it's because when you understand sexual abuse, and usually it comes from a family member, you understand that that person also has a family, and they probably experienced that too. And so, as a child, you don't want to ruin that family. It isn't that you don't want it to stop. You just don't want to ruin your cousin's family that they don't have their father there. And so, when I talk about solutions, sometimes the solution is me and her are going to go and confront that person. Or me and her are going to write a letter and go and give it to them. And basically to explain how it impacted them. What do they want from that? Apologies are beautiful. But if a changed behavior doesn't come from an apology, it doesn't mean anything. And so that's what we talk about. But I wanted to share that because there's a lot of restrictions that are put on people being able to tell you something. If you're in that helping field, if you are a social worker, or if you are a psychologist or psychiatrist, even though you might want to help them, because those stipulations are there, they're not going to tell you. And so how helpful is that? because that's what helps to clear the spirit out, is to get rid of that. And you know, I had this friend, and he was a psychologist, and him and I were working in the same community. And you know, I travel to these communities, and they don't know me. I just get invited to come, and so I go. So I usually get this warning, but it stopped happening now. But the warning is, you probably aren't going to get too many people signing up to come see you because they don't know you. And so they're not going to come until they get to know you. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. And I get there, and it's full. People have signed up, and then there's a waiting list. And it blows my mind that that happens when I just trust the Creator, you know what He's doing. So anyhow, one time I was traveling back, and I was riding with the psychologist, and the psychologist had been going into this community for 30 years, over 30 years. And he says to me, Wendy, I've noticed that you had people all day and all week, and people were coming in and out of your office like crazy. How did you do that? Did you like send them emails? Did you tell them what you do? And I said, no, I never did anything. And he said, well, why are they showing up? He said, I'm here, and I see maybe 4 people in a week. And I was seeing 6 a day. And then some. There was more than that, but I would be like, okay, I'm tired, I gotta stop. And I told him, I said, the difference between you and I is that, one, I'm Native. As a Native person, I know what it's like to grow up in a crowded home. I know what it's like to carry water. I know what it's like to have to worry about if I'm going to eat. Are we going to have food the next meal? I know what it's like to have dirt roads and to be stuck with having your hair full of dirt and you know, stuff like that in the summer. There's things as a Native person that only Native people can relate to. And that's what I told him. I said, have you ever experienced any of that? And he said, no, of course not. I said, okay. So how could you possibly understand what it feels like? Have you ever been mistreated because of the color of your skin? Have you ever been judged or looked down upon because of your features? No matter what you know. And he said, no, of course not. I said, you'll never know what it's like to be Native, so how the heck do you think you can relate to them? And he said, well, I just want to help. And I said, you can try, and you have been trying, but I'm telling you, that's why they're not coming. They look at you and they think, this guy probably has never experienced what it's like to be cold, to be hungry, to be overcrowded. And so it was a hard truth for him to swallow. But I told him, I'll tell you what's missing. I said, it's the spirituality. As Indigenous people, one thing we need is we need to have that strong spirit inside. And part of that comes from a positive self-identity. It's knowing who you are and knowing the positive things that come from that. And so our ceremonies are a connection to the spirit world. And so when you go to ceremonies and you're able to understand, it helps you to understand where you fit in this whole universe. The language helps us to connect to those teachings and to the words that come from the ceremonies and helps us to feel connected to the ancestors. our spiritual understandings of how we're supposed to relate to ourselves. That comes from a lot of different messengers. The peacemaker. The peacemaker was a messenger who came to teach us about having peace inside of us and the gift of having a good mind. And how do you get a good mind? How do you know if you got a good mind? Because if you have all this abuse going on, and you got all this chaos going on, and all these addictions going on, that brings a very chaotic and confused mind. How can you possibly be at peace when you have that going on? But that's what has happened because of all this attack on Native people. And so to help them is to bring them back to that positive self-identity. For instance, I had a person who was deathly afraid of the dark. They could not stand the dark in any situation. Even if I was holding their hand, they were petrified. And it was because of the sexual abuse that happened. They were afraid of the dark, and they were afraid of closed quarters, like a closed-in room. And I told her, I want you to come into a sweat. And she said, what is that? I said, it's our mother's womb. And it's a place where spirits are going to come and visit us, and they're going to listen and help. And she said, wow, that sounds wonderful. I said, yeah. I said, it's very dark in there. And she said, no way, I'm not going in there. She said, will there be other people? I said, not if you don't want it. It could just be me and you. And she said, let me think about it. I said, okay. So the next time I went, she said, I want to try it. Because what I told her was that if you don't allow yourself to experience what scares you with somebody you trust, then it'll always be scary and it'll always control you and you'll always try to avoid it. So the best thing to do is let's face your fear together. So she agreed. So we went into a sweat and it was powerful. She saw lights in there. She had an amazing experience. Those lights were the spirits that came from those rocks. And she saw it with her own eyes. And I told her, whatever you share in here, you're not talking to me. You're talking to those spirits. You tell them what you want. What do you need to be at peace? What do you need to have a good mind? I said, you talk to them. I'm just a person like you. I'm going to sit in here and I'm going to talk for myself too. I'm just a human being too. And so, we had this amazing thing happen. She didn't try to run out. As a matter of fact, by the third round, she was sitting, she wouldn't even, they didn't want to go outside because I said, open the door. I said, you can go if you want and cool off. And she said, no, this is wonderful, this is beautiful. And she stayed in there. And after that, what that taught her was it taught her that the Creator listened to her. He is there for her. And she felt it. And when she come out, her mind was clear. This weight she was carrying had been lifted. And that woman went on to become sober. And she went on to get all her children back. She had lost 4 of her children. And she went back and fought for them. And today, she works as an addiction counselor. She went back to school and got her education. And she uses that lodge. Now she runs the lodge. And she uses it to help the people to understand. And that's the thing about being able to help our people. Today, the biggest traumas we have are from our children being apprehended, the drugs and the alcohol, the suicides, and it comes down to our inability to have healthy relationships from the time we're small and growing into a family and having those healthy family relationships. That is the most damaging from the effects of all of them. Residential schools, being haunted. You know, you don't think it's a big deal, but my father had a behavior from his grandmother that he still lived with up until he got to be about 60 years old. And that is, his grandmother taught him when he was growing up to always fold his clothes and put it in a neat little pile with his running shoes on top or his shoes on top. And my father always did that. At the end of his bed, on the floor, you'd see a pile, that's his clothes. And he asked his grandmother, why are you teaching me this? And she said, because if the RCMP or the government people, the white people come, they're going to try to steal you. So you grab your clothes and you run. And that was in my dad's time. That was still a fear that our people have. And that is a memory fear. It's a memory trauma. It's in our blood. And so a few of the other traumas that have been happening is now the land stuff, the protests, the people. In my community where I come from, we had the Caledonia thing. I don't know if you remember that, about 10 years ago or something. That was very traumatic because we thought at that time that no way would the police come and assault, beat, and kick, and aim guns and tasers at old people, at children, at women. And it happened. And that was very traumatic for our whole family, our whole people, our community. We had over, 2,000, 3,000 people there that witnessed that. And you know, the stories that my aunties and my dad had regarding the RCMP and the police and the assaults that were happening because of the oppression of the traditional governing body in my community. They were trying so hard to do away with the traditional government that they were using force to remove anyone who was supportive of it. That's how the elected council came into our community with a gunpoint. And so the trauma that come from that in 1956, the RCMP came and they attacked the people. That stayed in my father and my aunties and so forth in their memory so strong that they taught it to us and we would hear them tell the story. And it was like I was there and I witnessed it. But I wasn't even born. And when I went to do a presentation in front of these police officers, I didn't know why I felt the way I did. But I was so angry at them. I couldn't feel like, I didn't want to talk to them. I didn't want to tell them nothing. I was there to do a presentation on culture. And I didn't want to tell them anything. And it comes from that memory, that genetic memory that we carry. And so, when you think about dealing with our people today, it's being able to help them to find that belief in another human being again. That's what gets lost in all of this. It's feeling safe with people. And especially as Indigenous people, it's feeling safe with non-Native people. because of that history. It's a blood memory that's inside. Any race of people that have that history will have that in them. And so, when it comes to working with indigenous people, one of the biggest things that's missing is that positive self-identity. So when you try and put the positive self-identity in them, it's going to take a little bit of proof that that's a good thing. And so when I'm able to work with them and work with their spirit and help their spirit to come up, that's what impacts them. You can work with the mind all you want, but it's the spirit, it's what you feel. You know, the spirit sits in here, and it gives you a knowing of right and wrong, and when something's real or not, truth, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. But if you don't know yourself, how to get in touch with that and how to help yourself, and have you done that? Because most educated people, it's all about the mind. That's the problem. That's the stumbling block. Is you gotta have an experience with the spirit and the spirit world. You know, I heard this saying one time about this guy was telling me the story. He was a ceremonial man, and he was from South Dakota. And he was telling me that one day this priest came to him. There was 3 elders. They never stopped with the ceremonies. And they didn't go to church that much, even though a lot of them were persecuted or killed if they didn't go to church. And so that's why a lot of them went to church, was so they wouldn't get killed. But when that started to kind of die down and they weren't going to be killed, they started practicing their ceremonies again and doing their pipes and stuff. So one day, the priests, they were all getting older, they were in their 80s, came to these men and said, I want to know, what does the devil look like to your people? Who is the devil? And those 3 men looked at one another, they talked in the language, and then they said, we are hoping you would tell us. You're the one brought him here. They said, we didn't know nothing about that until your people came here and started talking about him. So then he says to well, how come I haven't seen you in church if you are such spiritual people? So again, they talked amongst each other and they said, well, when we go there, all you do is talk about him. But when we go into the lodge, we talk to him. And the answer, he answers. So we get more out of the lodge than we do going there, because you're just telling stories. Here we get a conversation. And that's the difference between logic and knowledge and all that. You can know stuff and you can repeat it. But to actually have a relationship and for your spirit to feel it and to know it brings a healing. And so, in going into these communities where the church still has a big hold of people, so much fear that I've had to be accommodating. So some people, they gotta sneak. Some people will put a towel over their head or something to hide themselves so that their family or somebody don't see them coming to see me or going into a ceremony. That shame still exists of practicing or participating in the ceremonies. Being a Native person, there's still shame that exists. And so when it comes to history, You have to know your history in order to understand where we come from. And what I usually tell them is start with your own family. Ask in your own family. Did grandma or grandpa go to residential school or boarding school? Or did they, how did we come away from our ceremonies, our language, our culture? And then if you want to go further, you can go and say, how did we get here? Why are we in this area? Where did we come from? Were we always here? Or did we come here because of relocation? Or did we come here because of wars? And we are running because that means something. And so when you start to discover and uncover the history of why we are the way we are, that brings healing. Because another part of it is, am I going to continue to go forward with what I've learned? Is what I learned helpful? Is it helping me to feel better about myself? Is it helping me to feel like I have a good future ahead of me? Is what I'm teaching my children and my grandchildren a good thing? That one day I'll feel like I'm safe and at peace, and yes, I've given them a wealth of knowledge. Because as parents, that's what our job is. Our job is to be those teachers in our families. And so when you're working from a place of trauma, it's hard to even envision that. And the helplessness, that comes from that whole residential school. When you come out of there, they pretty much drilled it in you that you're a useless piece and you know what? And you're good for nothing, basically. And so a lot of them came out of those boarding schools and residential schools feeling like a piece of crap that's just supposed to be abused. And so that's why they turn to addictions. That's why as long as there are wounded people, hurt people, confused people, you'll always have those addictions of some type. And so how you get to the root of it, to cut off that supply of their need of the addiction, is they have to get to the spirit. And they have to get to that, how do I fix this inside of me? Because the spirit's the only thing that continues. This body is done with it when we're done here. And if you don't know how to help somebody with their spirit, then find someone. Because the healing, or if you don't know how to help yourself, you're going to do an inner trip. And you got to go, where is that spirit? Where is it at? How is it looking? Because I'll tell you, that spirit, once you learn to take care of it, that will bring you so much. It'll bring you happiness. It'll bring you calmness, peacefulness, connection, wanting to have relationships. You know, when people give up on relationships, that tells me something. It tells me that they've given up on themselves as well. Because in order for you to have any kind of relationship out there, you gotta know how to have a relationship in here. You gotta know how to treat yourself, how to love yourself, how to listen to yourself. And when there's drugs and alcohol involved, it makes everything very cloudy. It makes everything really far away. And so, when it comes to the healing, this is why you can only help people who come to you. Like me, I have a brother who still drinks. I have three brothers left. One brother still drinks. And people say to me, how come you don't help him? And I say to them, I can only help people who come and sit there in front of me and offer me some tobacco. I've learned my words are nothing unless they come and sit with me. Then they've asked. And it's just like my psychologist friend, when he asked, why are people not coming to me? And I told him, remember you asked. And then I told him, so when it comes to helping other people, and another thing is, I know in school you might have learned that, when people want to straighten out, when they want to stop addictions, and they'll say, I'm here because my wife's going to leave me if I don't get some help, and that's why I'm here. And the usual response is, well, this ain't going to work because you're going to be here for yourself. You can't be here for somebody else, or somebody else is making you. But that's not true. In Native country, one of the biggest things you know is that you're meant to be useful. You're meant to have a purpose. You're meant to be purposeful. And so you think more as a group of, okay, how can I help this group of people, whether it's my family or the community? And so when they come with that answer of, I'm here because my wife sent me, I jump all over that and I say, great, good for her. I'm glad you're here. Because even though it's your wife who's sending you, you obviously must be a need help, because you still could have chosen not come. And so you getting sober, if it's for your wife or your family, great, let's go with that. And maybe it'll bring you along with it. So when you hear that, don't discourage it. Embrace it. And say, for sure, let's do this. Whatever the reason that brought them there, take it. I want to share a story. And this story is about this white lady who was my friend. And she was Italian. And she told me a story. She came to see me. She wanted help. And I said, okay. So she told me her story about her growing up. And her father, he was from Italy. He had been molested pretty much all his life up till he turned 16 and ran away. And they left Italy and came to the United States. And that's where he started to have a family. And he had 3 daughters. And he started molesting all the daughters. She was one of them. And then he started prostituting them out when they were like 3, 4 years old. And they were made to have sex with his friends for cases of beer and stuff like that. And she come to see me because she couldn't forgive him. And he is still alive, and it was coming to a point where he's going to die soon. And the mother was almost insistent that these daughters come and help her. And so she come to see me because she tried to find a way that she could be in his presence without wanting to choke him, because she had just grown such a hate for him that she had just cut him off. And so I started talking to her about what I knew about the spirit. So I said, well, you know, the spirit always wants goodness and love and all those great heavenly behaviors. That's what our spirit always wants. And it wants it not only from ourselves to be that way, but it wants it from other people to be that way towards us. And so that was a spiritual need that wasn't met. And it wasn't met because of what your father experienced. And so you have to give up the idea that he could have been better. He could have been healthier. And you have to accept that he was unhealthy. When we have healthy expectations for unhealthy people, we set ourselves up to be disappointed, hurt, then angry. Once you accept he is unhealthy, and you ask yourself, what can I expect from an unhealthy person? Unhealthy behavior, unhealthy values. That's what you're going to get. So in order for you to be at peace when you go to see him, you just have to accept he is unhealthy instead of wishing he was healthier, wishing for those behaviors that you wanted. And she goes, what about my mother? I feel so sad for her. And I said, your mother's in the same boat. I don't know what she did, but she is obviously unhealthy, or she wouldn't have stayed with this man. And so how can you expect her to be healthy and have those healthy values and be supportive and be protective and all that when she wasn't healthy either? And she just sat there for a while and she said, you're right. Okay. So what does that mean when I go there? How am I supposed to act? And I said, how old are you? She said, 68. I said, how does a 68-year-old act in the presence of a dying person? She just stood there and she said, will you be caring? I said, yeah. Forgive him? I said, that's up to you. Forgiveness is not for that person. It's for you. And I want to share a dream with you to help you understand forgiveness, because that's a big one for a lot of people. A lot of people struggle with being able to forgive. And it's because it means different things for different people. Some people, they were taught that it means to totally do away with and be accepting of whatever the behavior was and do away with any other thought. But what I learned about forgiveness come from my own experience. When I was 20, I almost died, as she was saying. And I was sick for 5 years. What happened was my appendix broke. And when they went to take it out, they found I had Crohn's disease. So they cut out half of my stomach, 2.5 feet of my intestines, plus my appendix. So I couldn't eat, basically, for 5 years, and I weighed like 85 pounds, and I had all these spiritual experiences, in and out of the hospital. And one of the times I was in a hospital, I had this dream. And in the dream, I was in this canoe. And I was paddling, and there was 3 boats tied off of this canoe. And there was a grandfather sitting in the front. And I knew the grandfather because he had been in my dreams before. And he had long white braids, and he had on buckskin clothes, and he was sitting facing me. And in this one boat that was tied off of mine was my ex-boyfriend. I had a daughter when I was 19, and he left me when she was only 3 weeks old. And he started drinking, and he never came back. He was from another community. So I was a single mom. And I had a lot of anger towards him. And now this side was two cousins. And these cousins had hurt me in my life. And I held hard feelings towards them for a long time. And so in the dream, I'm paddling. And I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just basically sitting still because the current's coming this way. And I'm doing all the work, and his grandfather is just sitting there talking. And he says, I want to talk to you about your anger. He said, your anger is what keeps making you sick. That's why you keep ending up in the hospital. And he said, this man here, I want to talk about you forgiving him. And I was like, I was mad just at the thought of that. And he said, when you carry anger, it's like this. Who's doing all the work here? I said, me. I was the only one paddling. They were sitting there getting a free ride with no expression on their face. And he said, I want to talk about forgiveness. He said, forgiveness is not for them. He said, it's for you. Forgiveness is when you're able to untie that boat and untie yourself from all your anger, your revengeful thoughts, all the hopes and wishes you had for that person, of how you wanted them to be. And he said, if we untie the boat, he said, then they're going to go down the river. And who controls the current? He said, the Creator. He said, right. So the Creator then can do what He's going to do. And the Creator has much more resources than you. And He's been doing this a lot longer than you. So if you think He don't know how to fix him and teach him a lesson, you're wrong. But as long as you carry that thought that you're going to be the one who teaches him and gives him revengeful, whatever you're going to do to him, and stay angry, you're giving him a free ride. So he said, if we untie this boat, the next time you think of him or the next time you see him, you can't have an angry thought or a mean thought or a revengeful thought. But instead, you offer him a prayer because the Creator's going to be after you. He said, can you do that? I sat there for a bit, I'm paddling away, and the thing that got me the most was these men had no expression on their face. They didn't care one way or the other if I forgave them or not. They didn't care. So I said, okay, I'll try. And I untied that boat and I threw that rope. And he just drifted away in the current. And he said, my grandfather says, and that's what you call letting it go. And I was like, wow. And so he said, what about these two? And I looked at them and they didn't care. They were just sitting there in expression, and I was like, and even though I held those hard feelings longer, it still was easier once I done it. So I looked at them and I untied it and I let them go and they both floated away, no expression. And then he says, now paddle. Oh my God, that boat was so light and I could just go anywhere I wanted on that river. And he said, this is how life is. When you learn to forgive every day, because you're going to meet many people, and people aren't going to know how to treat you. And even if you tell them how you want to be treated, doesn't mean that they're going to listen. They still get to choose. And so people aren't going to treat you the way you want to be treated. So learn to forgive every day. Keep your boat light. And then you can go anywhere you want. And you'll still be happy. When you get good at it, learn to forgive every hour. Then you'll really be happy. And so that's what I learned about what forgiveness is. And that's what I learned about what letting go is. And so I share that story when people are struggling with forgiveness. Is that when you hold on to that anger and that expectation and those revengeful thoughts, you're really giving that person a free ride. You're protecting them from the consequences that the Creator wants to give them. Because He thinks you're going to give it. And so, when it comes to anger, what I learned about anger is that anger is hurt plus fear, or the fear of being hurt. So when somebody says, I'm an angry person, that tells me that that person has a lot of hurt and they have a lot of fear in them. And so in order to change that, you know, like I had this one client who was like, you know what I hate the most? I hate the most this one girl. When I see her, oh, everything just leaves me and I just become instantly angry. And I hate that she has that power over me. And I said to her, you know, she's not even doing anything. It's your own mind that's making you that way. When you think about someone right now, I want you to just think about somebody right now that almost instantly makes you angry. Just hearing their name or just picturing them. And I want you to picture that person standing in front of you. And they're just about to say something to you. Okay. What did you notice happen with your body? Tense? What else? I saw some people's faces turning red, actually turning red. They're angry. Did you notice your breathing change? Did you notice that your stomach might have felt kind of hurt? Or you felt like something get tight in there? You see, if you go back to that moment and you think about the thoughts that were going through your head about that person. I didn't tell you what to think about them. All the names you were thinking of. I didn't tell you what to think about that. You put that in your head. And so it's those thoughts that make you feel upset. And so because it's you who's making you feel that way, it's you that can change also to feel different. Because as long as you carry that kind of anger, you're keeping your boat heavy. And you're not going to grow in life. It holds you back. And so it isn't them that your anger is affecting. It's you that is affecting. And it's your own growth and happiness that it affects. That's what I learned. And so when I'm working with people in the communities, and they have a lot of anger towards whoever, everything, and especially within their families, and I'll tell you why. Because our families, we know, are supposed to be the most supportive, protective, and loving group of people we're supposed to have. And so what we do is we put these healthy expectations on them. We expect them to be understanding, loving, supportive, aware of our birthdays, you know, aware of whatever else is going on, and send us a birthday card, or come to our birthday party, or wish us. And those are healthy expectations. And our people have been through a lot. 95% of the population is unhealthy to a degree or another. Some is really, really unhealthy. Usually they end up in jail. And some is a little bit unhealthy, or they might tell the odd white lie, or stuff like that. So when you put these healthy expectations on unhealthy people, you set yourself up to be disappointed, hurt, and angry. And so when you come across the next time you're feeling angry, just stop, don't say nothing, don't do nothing. Go within yourself and ask yourself, am I having a healthy expectation of this person? It's very deep inside what we're doing. Okay, I am. I'm the one who's making me feel this hurt, angry. I've got to accept they're unhealthy. I got to remember what Wendy said, they're unhealthy. You can use my name if you need. They're unhealthy, and what can I expect from an unhealthy person? Because the people we do it to is the ones closest to us. Our family, our friends, our co-workers, professionals. We put this expectation on professionals to be healthy. And our idea of what healthy is. And so that causes us to get disappointed, hurt, and angry. And I tell people, you can get as many degrees as you want, but nobody checks their moral compass. Nobody has that ability to go inside and go, okay, what kind of person is this really? And so you can be a physician and still have unhealthy values. You'll see that in the newspaper, You see all this stuff, but you haven't made the connection. And that's what the connection is. It's our healthy expectations for unhealthy people. We've all been through trauma. We have all these unhealthy behaviors trickling down. Mind you, we're getting a little bit better than we were. I travel to a lot of communities, and I can't believe, in the one northern community, they have about a 90% sober, like no drugs, no alcohol. There's only a small percentage that's left that's still using. And what changed is they started doing land-based healing. So that means they take them and they reconnect them, and they take them out on the land for 2 weeks to a month at a time. And they just teach them what their ancestors did. And it heals their spirit. Because there's a connection to the land. There's a connection to all of this. And that's what's been lost in a lot of our people. And the ability to have that relationship with that spirit world and to give it to another human being, to let them see that, no, the Creator hears you. And you do have help. And He is going to hear your prayer. It brings their faith back. Because the faith is broken when harm comes to them. And so how can you give that back to someone when it's something that the Creator gives them when they're born? That's why when you hold a baby, it's so strong. Because they're mostly spirit. A baby is mostly spirit. And so you feel it right here where your spirit is. And so as they go through life, depending on what they go through, will depend on how strong that spirit stays. And that spirit needs to feel safe. It needs love. It needs nurturing. It needs support, gentleness, kindness. But it also needs truth. And truth is a medicine that's powerful. And you've got to know how to use it. You use truth with kindness, and it'll do its own work. But if you use truth in a scary way, banging your fists or doing this, that's why it doesn't work when you're doing that to your kids, yelling at your kids, because all they're doing is seeing you acting crazy, raising your voice and doing this or falling on things, and all that does is scare them, and they stop listening. The Spirit needs gentleness. And if you want to get through to the Spirit, which helps them in the end to correct themselves, stop themselves from going down the bad path, it's the Spirit that you need that. So, truth is very powerful, and it's a medicine if you know how to use it. Use it with gentleness. I want to thank you for sitting there. Give me the sign. I'm not too sure how much time I have left, but is there 5 more minutes? I'll tell you one dream, okay? One dream. This dream I used to help this man who was violent, and he was abusing his wife, and he was abusing his kids, and he was going to have to go away if he didn't come see me. So I had one chance to talk to him and to see if he would change. So I shared a dream with him because, as Native people, one of our greatest tools we have is storytelling. And storytelling is a very indirect way of giving you a lesson and letting you think about something without saying, you're bad, and like this kind of thing. So anyways, here's the dream. So in the dream, I'm asked to go tell my dreams at the Long House. And I'm really excited, and I'll go. So I go and I speak for like 3-4 hours. And I started to end my talk. And I started thanking them for coming and sitting. Then I remembered it was a dream I had the night before. I said, wait. I said, there's one more dream I gotta tell you. I said, last night, this woman came to me in my dreams, and she told me that all over the world, people are running about the earth, and they're trying all these different things, trying to get closer to their own spirit, their spirit guide, and to the Creator. And they're trying all these different things like sweat lodges and sun dancing and Buddhism and all this other stuff, trying to understand that part of it. And she said, and I'm going to tell you what all you need to do in order to get closer to your own spirit, your spirit guide, and to the Creator. She says, all you need to do is to start correcting your own behavior. At the end of each day, you need to look back over each day you've been given, and you need to look at if someone has come into your life that day and said to you, thank you so much for saying what you said to me. That meant so much to me. Or thank you so much for doing what you did for me. That meant so much to me. When that happens to you in your daytime, you need to pay attention to that. And what you'll notice is, you'll notice there'll be a warm feeling that happens right here. And this warm feeling will spread out, and it'll go up into your face, and it'll make you smile. Whether it's in your eyes or in your mouth. There's 2 ways to smile. When that happens to you, that's your spirit. And it's giving you that feeling because it's telling you, continue with that behavior. That's good for you. But also, you need to look back over each day you've been given, and you need to look at if someone has come into your life that day and they've yelled at you, or they've argued with you, or they've said something to you that causes you a pain here. You need to pay attention to that too. And rather than getting mad at that other person, because it does you no good to get mad at that other person, because you'll only suppress yourself and make yourself sick. And so rather than getting mad at another person, you need to ask yourself, what did I do in order to bring that about? I better not continue with that behavior. Because this pain that happens here, that's your spirit too. And it's giving you that pain because it's telling you, don't continue with that behavior. It's not good for you. And so as you look back over each day you've been given, and you start to pay attention to what's happening to you, and you start to pay attention to how this feels, and you start to correct your own behavior by paying attention to that, what you're doing is you're listening to your own spirit, and you're respecting your own spirit. And this spirit guide that everyone has, here's you, and here's your spirit guide. And when you're born here, it's like this. And everywhere you go, they go. Once you learn to walk and talk, they move away from you a little bit. And the spirit guide is like a human being. He says, imagine yourself that while you're on the earth, you learn an awful lot about something. Then you get done with this earth, and you go up into the heavens. And you go into this room full of people. And from a certain person's behavior and personality, you pick that person. And you say, that's the one there that I'll teach everything I learned while I was on the earth. So you go over to that person and you try and lay something out for them to learn from. And rather than them learn from it, they ignore it and they just go off in a direction. So you get up and you go running ahead of them and you try and lay something else out for them. And they ignore that and they just continue with their behavior. And she said, every time your guide lays out a lesson for you and you don't learn from it, but instead you ignore it and you just keep continuing with the behavior, she said, your guide moves away from you like this. And pretty soon, you'll be going through life like this. And she said, when you hear a person say, I feel so alone, I don't feel protected, or I don't feel guided. When you hear a person say one of those three things, or all of them, she said, that's when this has happened. Because essentially they are alone, because it's meant to be like this. And so as you look back over each day you've been given, and you start to correct your own behavior by paying attention to what's happening, paying attention to how this feels, and correcting your own behavior, with each correction you make to yourself, your spirit guide moves closer to you, like this. And pretty soon, you'll be going through life like this again. Because what the spirit guide thinks is they think, why would you listen to this spirit when you're not even listening to this one that you have inside you? And why would you respect this spirit when you're not even respecting this one that you have inside you? And so as you start to correct your own behavior by paying attention to that, the spirit guide feels safe enough to come close enough to you. And from your prayers to the Creator, He sends direction down to this one. And this one gives it to you. And that's how you get closer to your own spirit, your spirit guide, and to the Creator. So I tell this dream at the longhouse. And this one man stands up and he's really angry. And he stands up and he just bangs his fist on a table like that and he says, so what? We're all just supposed to just listen to you? He goes, what about my wife here? She corrects me all the time. He's like, she sees things in me that I need correcting, and I see things in her that she needs correcting. And so what good is our relationship if that's not what it's for? He said, I thought that's why we're together. And what about my children? He said, I feel I got a right to correct my children's behavior. What about that? And he sat back down, and I thought about what he said, and I thought, yeah, that sounds right. And I didn't know how to answer him. And I looked around in the longhouse, and I saw the spirit of that woman that was in my dreams the night before. She was in there with us. And just in my mind, I talked to her. And I said, will you come and answer this question for me? Because I don't know how to answer it, because it seems right. And she come floating over to me. And she went inside me. This is how she answered. She said, you're right, to a certain extent, that your wife has a right to correct you and you her. But your wife has only joined you at a certain point in your life. She hasn't taken every step that you've taken since you've been on this earth. And that's what makes you up. And because she can't take every step you take, or turn every corner you turn, or go into every room you go into, and even if she can, she still don't know what you think or what you feel. She can only tell you what she sees and what she thinks. And so because of that, you have that responsibility to correct the way you think and the way you feel, which affects your behavior. And the same for your children. Because you can't take every step they take, or turn every corner they turn, or go into every room they go into. And even if you can, you still don't know what they think or what they feel. You can only tell them what you see and what you think. And so because of that, they have that responsibility to correct the way they think and the way they feel, which affects their behavior. And that's how she answered. And he got even more mad. And he stood up and he banged his fist again, and he says, so what? You're Miss Perfect, and we're all just supposed to just listen to you? And I said, that's not what I said. I said, there's no one that's perfect on this earth, or we wouldn't be here. Everyone makes mistakes. And as a matter of fact, I'll share with you something happened to me to show you that I make mistakes. I said, last week, a woman came in my office and she asked if I would go and burn tobacco at her house and pray for her family because somebody was sick in her family. I said, no, I can give you some tobacco though. She left. Next day, another woman asked if I'll go burn tobacco at her house and pray for her family because they weren't getting along. And I said, no, I can give you some tobacco though. She left. Then I come out of my office and the receptionist says to me, what are you saying to these women? 2 days in a row now, they've left crying out of your office. What are you saying to them? And I was shocked, and I said, I just offered them tobacco. I said, I don't know why they'd be upset. And it was like this weight got put on me. And that's all I could think about was, what did I do wrong? What did I say wrong? I didn't want anybody leaving out of my office crying. And so that night, before I went to bed, I prayed. And I said to the Creator, whatever it is I did wrong, I'll make this right tomorrow. I know that you've created everyone. And I know we're not supposed to hurt one another. So I'll make this right tomorrow. Next day came, I went into work and I thought about it and I thought, well, maybe I wasn't clear enough. So I went to the first woman's house and I told her, I said, yesterday when we talked, and I offered you that tobacco, I thought about it and I realized maybe I didn't make myself clear. So I've come to make myself clear with what I meant. And I said, what I meant is that because you have hair, eyes, ears, nose, a mouth, a body, I don't have nothing more than what you have. And you have just as much right to pray and ask for those things as I do. And the Creator, He has no favorites here. He loves you just as much as He loves me. He'll hear you as much as He will hear me. Because you have been created, you have a direct connection to Him. And you have just as much right to pray and ask for those things as I do. And as a matter of fact, I thought it would probably be more powerful if you prayed and asked for those things. Because why would you listen to me praying for your family? But I said, if you still want me to, I can. And I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings and everything. I didn't need to. And my rest of my day was beautiful. I got to go home and spend time with my family. And that night I had a dream. And in the dream, I was sitting there in this waterfall. This mist was falling on me, the sun was shining on me, and I could smell strawberries and wildflowers really strong. And when I woke up, I could still feel the mist and smell the flowers and the berries. Like, oh, that man. I said, there's an example that I'm not Miss Perfect, and I make mistakes. But I choose to look back at them and correct them if I can. And within my mind, what I thought is, because I corrected my own behavior without anyone telling me to or making me, that Creator allowed me to feel that little bit of heaven in my dreams. And not only in my dreams, but the next day, whenever I would talk about it, I would feel that mist and smell the flowers and berries. So I said, and as for heaven to listen to me, I said, you don't have to listen to me. You can continue on as you have. That was just a dream I had. That's all I was asked to do. So I want to thank you. And after I told that man the dream who was being domestically violent with his family, he stopped. Because I told him, your wife and your children all had guides. So you're not the only one in that house with them. And if you think you won't have consequences, you will. The gift of life is happiness and freedom of choice. But there's consequences to what makes us happy. So I'm leaving with that. Thank you. So I know I'm past my time. I'm sorry.